Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd. Here. Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
6 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're here today pursuant to Resolution Number 53. Would you come forward and just give us a quick overview as the sponsor of the resolution, and then we'll get into the testimony.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you said, we're here to talk about Resolution 53, which deals with the PIER plan. The PIER plan was put in place in 2015 to tackle some of the social and economic challenges that we have in the city of St. Louis. They're targeting 15 neighborhoods. But I'm going to have Carl Filler come up and give a big overview and an update of exactly what's going on. You know, present again what it's about, what its objectives and goals are, and where we are today as far as accomplishing the many goals that have been put forth in the plan. Carl.
You can come on up, but right before, I just want to remind us that this resolution, we know, came through the committee, was passed by the full board, and it directs this committee to hold hearings in reviewing the plan and getting ongoing updates at least every other month. I did supply to us a paper copy of the PIER plan to all the committee members that's here before you. And then before the plan was created, those who were on the committee then, we had several sessions with Dr. White from St. Louis University and Dr. Rosenfeld from UMSL to review with the committee what are the elements of a good crime prevention plan. And so the results of that, the summary of that, is also on our desk here today. And so with that, we can go to Carl Filler. And then you can also introduce anyone else you have with you.
Yeah.
We have something.
I actually printed the PIER plan as well, but if you already
you
have
did?
copies, so
Oh, okay.
we have extra copies if anyone would like some.
That's fine.
So thank you, Chairman, thank you, members of the committee, and thank you, Alderman Boyd, for inviting me here today. I'm here with the Mayor's office, and I'm here to sort of, for some of our new members and for those who may not have been here last time, talk a little bit about the previous administration's PIER plan, talk about what that might look like under the new administration, and then any input, and then obviously in the future it sounds like we can come back whenever you'd like to provide updates should this resolution pass. So in front of you is the St. Louis, City of St. Louis's PIER plan. So that stands for Prevention, Intervention, Enforcement, and Reentry. So these are what we consider sort of the pillars of crime reduction. You know, we prevent the conditions that, you know, we support strong communities and families through prevention. We intervene with individuals and groups who are at risk of committing a crime. We enhance enforcement through data and deterrence through law enforcement. And then we support individuals as re-enter our community from jails and prisons. And as the Alderman had mentioned, the PIER plan was introduced in December of 2015 under previous Mayor Francis Slay. It focused on 15 city neighborhoods, and those are in the plan, but that's Wells Goodfellow, Jeff Vanderloo, Baden, Greaterville, the West End, Penrose, Graveway Park, Mark Twain, Hyde Park, Walnut Park West, Kingsway West, Mark Twain I-70 Industrial, O'Fallon, and Bevo Mill. These neighborhoods were selected based on the number of homicides and number of aggravated assaults with firearms. So the city at the time identified that that was sort of the main concern for our residents was firearm violence. You know, we obviously have many concerns as relates to crime and violence, but for us at the time, and I think continues to be, firearm violence really is the #1 concern. And, you know, I would like to preface this by saying, obviously, this plan was created under the previous administration. And so really, right now, our administration is reviewing this and making sure that this is in alignment with the current crime fighting strategies, that it meets the new alderman's desires. So I think we are very open at this time to any feedback or input or any changes as we figure out with our new chief, interim chief, and our new mayor, what this looks like and what best can get the goals that we want. I would say at the end of the first year, so again, the end of 2016, it was a mixed bag in terms of results. Obviously, the goal here was to reduce violent crime. 10 of our neighborhoods saw a decrease in crime, but 5 saw an increase. So that was not, obviously our goal would be to have across the board decrease in crime. And so that's something that we will be looking at to see what parts were effective and what parts were not. And in that time period, overall, the city had a flat homicide rate, but we did see an increase in violent crime overall. So, you know, that plan, I think, had some good elements, but we definitely want to revisit that. So again, we're reviewing that now. We want to make sure under the new administration that we take any existing plans and work forward in a sort of an action-oriented approach. We want to make sure that we move towards sort of an action agenda as opposed to a plan, making sure that we have specific things that are going to be done in the short term with real measurable results. And just quickly to talk about some of the things that's not necessarily in the PIER plan, but sort of I think will take us on the direction that I hope everyone agrees is positive. We have our Citizen Advisory Committee, which is helping select the new chief of police. As you know, the former police chief Dotson did retire, and we are now looking for a new chief, and that committee is meeting actually tonight. The interim chief O'Toole implemented CityStat, which will be looking at aligning city services with high crime areas. So operating departments and police command staff meet regularly to talk about how we can deliver services. And we do have here Major Caruso, and he can come up whenever you'd like, but he can talk in more detail about some of the law enforcement strategies, such as precision policing and others there. They've been working with a strategic planning effort with the former Boston Police Commissioner, Paul Evans. That effort has gone on, and I think that's finalizing now, and so there should be good internal strategies for the police department to work on building trust, improving enforcement, clearance rates, and that sort of thing. And then finally, obviously, the city is working on increasing salaries for the police department. And we understand that this is not necessarily something that's going to, in and of itself, decrease crime, but we think it's extremely important to not increase crime. It's important that our officers do not leave for other jurisdictions. It's important that they're paid commensurate with what they deserve. And so we do have a half-cent sales tax that I think everyone here is familiar with. So I won't go into too much detail about that, but did want folks to be aware of that. And then finally, just in terms of things from the PIER plan that are 100% going to be continue, we are going to increase funding for recreation and continue our training of staff there to make sure that we deliver high-quality training to all the kids in our neighborhoods that are served by those recreation centers. We're continuing to contract out increased funding for grass cutting, knowing that vacant lots and other vacant buildings are of concern to some of our neighborhoods and some of our elected officials. We want to make sure that we continue to empower local groups to cut grass and keep neighborhoods safe. We are working on a charity bail bond that I know passed here last session, and that RFP will be going out shortly, so we hope that we can start working to show that some of the folks in our jail maybe do not need to belong there, and we can find ways to protect public safety as well as improve outcomes for them, their families, and their communities at the same time. And then finally, we're training our criminal justice staff on trauma-informed practices. So we are working with Alive and Well St. Louis and the National Department of Justice to provide training to probation and parole, juvenile court, some police officers, and potentially others as well, so that when we encounter people in our community that may have had hard lives and traumatic experiences, we don't re-traumatize them and we understand their behavior is not necessarily criminal, but just a reaction to the trauma they've experienced in their lives. So I'm happy to go through as much or a little of the PIER plan as folks would like. It's relatively long. It's organized into an executive summary, which has the high-level components in it. We talk about what works, so evidence-based crime fighting strategies, talk about some of the crime statistics we have in the city. I think the one takeaway I always have people sort of try to internalize is that it's young men primarily that are driving violence in our community. And these young men have had hard lives and had not a lot of opportunities, so it's important for us to think about frameworks for fighting crime that support them before they sort of turn to crime and delinquency. But when they do, we give them opportunities to get out of that lifestyle and support them in re-entering the community should they encounter our jails or prisons. Then we talk about the specific strategies and some next steps. And so I'm happy to talk about as much or as little of that as you'd like. Again, I know many members here are familiar with this, but those are not. I can be as general or specific as you'd like. And again, if we do have Major Caruso here, so if there's any specific questions to the police department, I would like to turn the time over to him to answer those, since he'll know them a little better than I.
Do you have any analysis on why some neighborhoods actually increased in relationship to others?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we're looking at, and I think if we were to come back, we'd be able to provide that information to you. Right now, I can't answer that question, unfortunately, but that is one of the things that I think we can hopefully learn from the plan is why did this go up and this go down in this neighborhood? And I think most of it's probably related to specific small groups of individuals that may be active in those neighborhoods. We did do some enforcement activities that police department with some federal partners did some excellent job of identifying some real key crime drivers and intervening on them, but we'll have a better update for you on that next time.
And so you're anticipating to doing some updates on it based upon what the new administration is thinking?
Yes.
Any idea when that might be done?
I do not, but I think I could have some updates by the next meeting.
Okay. All right, we can take other questions from members of the committee. Alderman Jeffrey Boyd.
Yes, Carl, tell me what role does the circuit attorney's office play in the PIER plan?
Yeah, so they are an important partner, obviously, for our police department and our courts. You know, I think one of the main roles that they would play in a crime prevention plan would be, one, to ensure that individuals who are committing violent crime are prosecuted swiftly, and so that we can move them through the criminal justice as quickly as possible. I think the other important piece is both diversion and using their sort of prosecutorial discretion to actually, for individuals who may not benefit from encounters with the criminal justice system, to divert them out either formally or through not charging them in the first place. Again, for our city jail, everyone there, virtually everyone in the city jail is there on our pretrial detainees. Almost no one is there actually serving time. And so anything the prosecutor's office can move those people quickly through the system or not send them to the jail in the first place would be, I think, an important component of that.
And tell us again all the different agencies or departments that are actually part of the PIER plan.
I would say almost every single city department would be a part, but I would say the key players obviously is the police department. We have recreation, we have the health department, we have human services, we have even streets and traffic, thinking about speeding and how we can redesign our roadways. We have forestry, parks, obviously thinking about keeping lots clear. LRA, I know, has been another area talking about vacancy and how we can move buildings more quickly through that. SLDC has been a key partner, obviously thinking about how we can support neighborhoods and sort of doing economic development. And I'm probably missing other departments, but I'd say almost every department. I think from our perspective, it's sort of it's not just a police issue, and so we need to make sure that all our departments are sort of laser focused on supporting the police and supporting crime prevention strategies.
So tell me, is there a formal task force that's made up of all the departments?
So the closest thing we have to that is our city stats. We meet every 2 weeks in the police department and Major Crusoe, maybe, I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but it's essentially the police departments, each district captain will come and say, you know, in my neighborhood, this, 4600 block of X street, it has some issues around visibility, or there's been a lot of trash thrown out there, and they're able to refer to the departments to actually clean that up and take care of that. And we have our neighborhood stabilization team there as well to help being proactive as well. So that's probably the closest we have right now, but if that's a recommendation, I would certainly be happy to bring that back to the mayor.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling like is there's this initiative where all the agencies are going to be working together. Well, newsflash, they should have been doing that anyway. I mean, there's nothing new about that. So how can we get some tangible results or outcomes from all these quote-unquote departments working together? So I would think that if we're working on an initiative, and this is a real plan, that there are some regular meetings with all the stakeholders, not just law enforcement, because this can't be just about law enforcement. You talked about prevention, intervention as well. And I'm excited about what the circuit attorney is attempting to do with a diversion program, which you also had talked about. But if department heads are not meeting to talk about what's going on in their department and what resources they need in order to really make this work, then we're going through the motions and this plan becomes eyewash. And that's what's frustrating for me when government talks about a plan, but there's really no real action behind it, because we can look all day at police statistics, but then we pretty much will hold the police accountable for making sure this plan works. And that's not fair to law enforcement.
Agreed, and I think what we can do is from city stat, which I think is getting at what, and I agree that this probably should have happened years ago, but I would say I would encourage, the new administration has made this a priority, and so I can have metrics and results from that meetings that happens regularly from the police department, our operating departments, department heads, and provide that to you so you can see what are the tangible changes and how people working together better.
And so let me ask you, what do you call that meeting again?
City stat?
City stat. So is the circuit attorney invited to that meeting?
Right now, it's just city operating departments and the police department, just because the police department has sort of the eye on the ground view of what is happening on the streets. But I think I can bring that recommendation back to the police chief.
Because I'm just thinking, if I'm sitting in there, I may have questions for the police, and the police may respond with, well, we're doing our due diligence, but for some reason, things are falling through the cracks with this department or that department, or the circuit attorney's office. Because I've been alderman for about 15 years now. One thing I've learned when it comes to law enforcement is sometimes we can get into the blame game. You know, well, it's not the circuit attorney's office. The police do their due diligence, the circuit attorney's office doesn't prosecute. The circuit attorney says, well, the judges, don't allow us to do certain things. And so then it just keeps going around in a circle. And what I want to be able to do is be more effective and efficient as we look at our analysis and making sure that we are cooperating and communicating with each other so that we get the best benefit out of this plan for our constituents.
Agreed, I can work on that.
Okay, so when you come back, you'll tell us if there's a regular meeting scheduled and who all the partners are. And maybe some departments don't have to meet as regularly. I can understand that. But I would just think if we're serious about it, that there is some at least, monthly engagement of everybody with some recommendations on how we can do things better. And then I'll, when Major Caruso comes up, I know one of the things I have on here is hotspot policing, and how have that potentially impacted or driven crime from one area potentially to another area where we thought we were making inroads, but all of a sudden there was a spike. So if he would talk about that when he comes up here, that's a question I wouldn't have to ask. So I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
You want him up
When he's coming. I think he's going to come make a presentation, but I know we were talking to.
I think he's here to sort of answer questions, so I think if
Oh.
you'd like him,
Okay.
Major Crusoe, I don't put you on the spot, but.
Okay, go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
I think your question, all
I'm sorry, wait a minute. Go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
Oh, hi, I'm Major Mike Caruso. I'm assigned to the Chief's Office with the St. Louis Police Department.
Okay, so Major Caruso, tell us what you know about your involvement in the PIER plan, where you guys are today, and how well you think it's working.
Well, the PIER plan was something kind of new to us. It was started under Mayor Slay and under former Chief Dotson. And as we came into the positions we are now, new mayor, new police chief, a lot of us in different roles within the command structure of the police department, well, we kind of started learning about the PIER plan, flying by the seat of our pants. I personally didn't know a whole lot about it. Before here, I was assigned to the airport until we recently moved out of there. So I wasn't really up to what was going on with the PIER plan up until recently moving into the chief's office. So I'm still kind of a rookie in regards to what the PIER plan provides. I've been reading up on it, and I think where I can probably give you folks the best analysis is how the police department's strategic plan that we've been working on for the past several months kind of will feed into or support the PIER plan as we move forward. So, any specific questions, and I just got to get my notes for a second.
Okay.
I apologize for that. Any specific questions related to the PIER plan and the police department and how that's feeding into it, or you just want me to kind of summarize, or anything specific, you want?
Okay, can you start with when you learned about the PIER plan? So what are your thoughts about how the police department would play a role in reducing crime based on the PIER plan?
Well, the PIER plan, I've learned about it, I guess, several months ago overall, not knowing a lot of the specifics about it. However, society kind of looks at the police department as the enforcement, the heavy hand with part of any plan. And that's, decades and decades old of policing theory. However, with our strategic plan, we realize that that is just a part of what we have to do to address the violent crime in the city. And that's what I feel our strategic plan, how that feeds into the PIER plan. Now, while enforcement is a part of it, we feel that our community engagement element of our strategic plan is kind of the, I don't want to say secret weapon, but it's a facet that really hasn't been overutilized or even marginally utilized over the years. Colonel Ronnie Robinson with our police department has been tasked with the community engagement part of our strategic plan, and that includes the gang intervention part of the plan, but it involves getting out into the community, getting to know, we're pretty good at knowing who the bad people are in the community. What we're bad at is learning who the good people are in the community. And the good people in the community are the ones that we need to rely on most to help us achieve these goals that we're setting out to get done. So the community engagement, Colonel Robinson's part of this puzzle is, I like to say, kind of the secret weapon of the plan, because you don't hear much of that ever publicized. You know, so, and Colonel Robinson's been involved with gang intervention for years. He's our department resident expert in gang intervention, and he has a knack for developing relationship with the worst of the worst people out there. And he's also got the ability to get into the neighborhoods and bond and make relationships with the best of the best. So we see his part of the plan as a, like I said, is a very, very crucial element to the strategic plan and how that would fit into the PIER plan.
Okay, Major, so talk us in theory or in real-time, real-world analysis about why is there a spike with all the resources that we're putting into certain neighborhoods. Why would there be a spike in that neighborhood?
Well, here, one thing that we've proven through the years is that, and you talked earlier about hotspot policing. Hotspot policing is a buzzword that actually made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because it's a buzzword that came about through law enforcement, you know, several years back. But hotspot policing is nothing different than what we've done for the last 100 years in law enforcement. You put your resources where your problems are, and that is what we try to do. Now, keep in mind, as I stand here this morning, we are 114 officers short on the St. Louis Police Department. So there are challenges involved with that. And as such, with the PIER plan, I notice there are 15 neighborhoods out there. We have shown the ability to displace crime. But what we do is we take it from this alderman's ward and put it in that alderman's ward. And then one alderman during a hearing referred to hotspot policing as whack-a-mole. And I saw that and I laughed, but it was true. We can clear out this area, but then we're going to move it to this area. So sustainability becomes, you know, a major problem for us, especially when you're looking at 15 different neighborhoods. Now, we feel we can move into 1, 2, maybe 3 neighborhoods. 15 is just way too many for us to have any type of measurable effect in that many neighborhoods. But if we were to focus on 1, 2, maybe 3 at a time, I think the difference and the outcome would be a whole lot more positive than what we're seeing now. Some of the aldermen have seen in their wards where we're moving our command van and our roll calls out onto the street to give a little better visibility and give the good people in the neighborhoods the opportunity to stop by the command van, interact with the commanders and the officers there, and, you know, talk to them candidly. Or if they don't want to be seen talking to the officers there for fear of, you know, retribution down the road, you know, they can get a card to somebody where they can call confidentially later. The results of moving the command van into certain neighborhoods, and I think a couple of the members of this board have had the command van in their neighborhoods, and the results have been, and I think, yeah, you know, Alderman Boyd, you you know, you can speak firsthand about how you feel the results of that were, you know, and everything we got is positive, and we're going to continue doing that, you know, you know, indefinitely, you know, as long as the results are good. Now, that feeds into the PIER plan with, you know, the involvement and the intervention into the neighborhoods. So, hope that answered your question.
It did. I want to ask Carl to come up, and then I'm going to be done.
Really?
I'm sorry. Carl, so on page 54 of the PIER plan, it talks about pretty much the goals. It talks about prevention or short-term goals, 6 to 12 months, as long-term goals, 12 to 24 months, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure what these numbers represent to the left. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, like 5, like taking short-term, why is it 5 and not 1?
That is a good question. My guess is that it's a typo and should be 1. I think this is just a list of
Okay, so
bulleted
it
list.
should run from 1 all the way to page 56, whatever those bullets are, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Have you actually measured any of these objectives?
Yeah,
And
so
you have a report?
I have
where
a
we are today?
report, may be a generous term for it, but I can definitely provide you with what I have, tallying up what was achieved and what wasn't under the
Okay.
previous administration.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Vaccaro says he has no questions. Alderman Cone is here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to our new clerk of the board. Nice to have you with us. Carl, I guess,
He's the legal counsel.
legal counsel clerk.
Not clerk, legal counsel.
Oh, well, wonderful. Mazel tov. Congratulations on the promotion already. So early into your term. Carl, I was under the impression that coming into this meeting that we were actually going to talk about data, and, you know, to Alderman Boyd's last question, where is it?
So, and thank you, Alderman. I think the challenge is, and I'm happy to provide this, I think one, our understanding, and that may be on me, was that this was sort of the first reading of the resolution to understand a little bit more about it, an introduction of the PIER plan to new members. The challenge is because this plan is evolving and changing, you know, I'm hesitant to provide too much more, but I apologize if you expected data. I would say that, you know, we only measured it from the first year because under the last administration near the end, you know, things were in flux. So there isn't that, but we can definitely get that to you should you want to continue receiving information on this. Again, we have the data on the number of neighborhoods that have increased crime and decreased crime over that first year of the PIER plan. We have the number of objectives that were met, but if there are specific items besides the ones that Alderman Boyd already asked for, outcomes from city stat of the combination between operating departments and police department, we can provide that.
I mean, anything would be helpful. So, you know, this was adopted in December 2015. You know, we're in July 2017, you know, a year and a half later. So I understand there's been an administration change, but so is your understanding then, and is what you're communicating, that this is no longer going to be the plan, that we're evolving this plan, we're changing this plan, and so
Under we have a new mayor, a new chief, and as such, I think they want to take a hard look, and we are taking a hard look at what worked in that plan, what didn't, based on the data, based on the question about what was, I think.
But if you only have the first year's worth of data and you don't have the last 6 months,
Yeah, we are working on, yeah, we will have that, and we can provide that to you. I think, again, some of these strategies are no longer being pursued, so it's hard to then manage and evaluate the plan based on things that are no longer being done. So only during the first year am I confident that all the strategies outlined in this plan were being pursued. And so as such, you know, I would be hesitant to attach any successes or failures due to anything over the last 6 months, if that makes sense.
so, you know, as someone that represented one of the, you know, original 15 neighborhoods that were identified in the PIER plan that we adopted in December of 2015, you know, it's a challenge for me. You know, I mean, I was never a huge fan of quote-unquote hotspot policing. Even Rick Rosenfeld, who was the one that kind of coined the term locally for us and, you know, worked with the police department and others, you know, when he came before this public safety committee and myself and an alderman from the 21st, Antonio French at the time, you know, questioned him about hotspot policing. It is not what we were employing here locally. You know, Major Caruso actually mentioned the whack-a-mole reference, which was Alderman French's term, and Rick Rosenfeld agreed that that's basically what we were doing. We were showboating and, you know, whack-a-moling an issue. And, you know, I've been on this committee for a good part of my 8 years down here at the board. And, you know, I can tell, and I've said this to the former chief and others, you know, I have basically 5 hotspots in my ward, you know, and I'm sure most of us can reference a few in ours, you know, the other wards across the city as well, but, you know, Grant and Alberta, Virginia and Delore, Virginia and Bates, Gustine and Keokuk, you know, just to name probably the hottest out of the, you know, hot spots. You know, I just had another shooting at Grant and Alberta, actually, and, you know, there's a gas station there that's affectionately known by members of the community as Club Conoco, because it's constantly a revolving door of all sorts of, you know, activity there. And I've had very little support from anyone in city government to address those concerns. You know, the secondary police there, you know, are excited about, you know, working with the owners when the owners are, I mean, this is obviously a huge issue in the neighborhood, and it's just absolutely incredible to me that we don't have any resources to address. We've shut down the massive apartment complex across the street because the gas station owner says that it wasn't the gas station, it was the apartments. So we took 2 years and we shut down the apartments across the street. Then the issues persisted. So, you know, it was the bus stop all of a sudden that was the issue, not the gas station. We moved the bus stop down the street, ended up shutting down a business down the street, you know, and the issues still persisted, you know, at the gas station. You know, then we get, I mean, it's a whole litany of issues. And, you know, then at Virginia and Delore, there was another issue. You know, we ended up shutting down an apartment across the street from, you know, a convenience store. The convenience store went through almost 2 years worth of revocation hearings on their conditional use, even though they'd been deemed a nuisance property. And in their conditional use, it specifically stated that they could not be deemed a nuisance property. I had to personally spend $200 to appeal the upholding of the Board of Public Service to keep their conditional use in place. And then finally, when it went back to the Board of Adjustments, it revoked. In the meanwhile, the place got torched. It's burned down. You know, it's absolutely incredible to me that, like, all of these nuisances and all of these hot spots still persist. And it's so incredibly frustrating for me and my neighbors. And then I'm even more curious now, what is this plan? I mean, how are it and you and I have had this conversation also in regards to recreation programming. You know, mine and Kara Spencer's ward, you know, 30% of our population is underneath the age of 18. We have some of the highest concentration of youth in the entire city. And, you know, Marquette Park is sitting right in the middle of our 2 wards. And that rec center, you know, I have yet to see, you know, prolonged periods of extended hours to provide for, you know, recreational activities for youth. You know, the facilities itself need serious upgrading. And, you know, meanwhile, we're spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on other rec centers, you know, Cherokee being one. You know, it's great, all of our rec centers need attention, but, you know, these were supposed to be priority neighborhoods. They were supposed to be priority initiatives. Recreation is certainly on the list of things that need to be a priority for those neighborhoods. And here we are spending money on rec centers that aren't in those neighborhoods, that, you know, is taking money, frankly, away from those communities. So, you know, I just, you know, economic development, economic disinvestment is another one that's on the list here. So, you know, 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting in the mayor's office with, you know, members from East-West Gateway, you know, to talk about the North-South Metrolink extension. When we went to go pass the sales tax for the Metro and subsequent conversations with the previous administration, granted, you know, I was told that the North-South Metro would not get onto 55, that, you know, as part of our planning going forward, that we were going to review that and make it, you know, jump onto a main arterial road, Broadway namely. And in that meeting, you know, not only was it still on 55, but the people from East-West Gateway and the consultant groups had never even heard that it shouldn't be on 55. So, you know, you're talking about an extension south of Chippewa that runs mostly through Dutchtown, Carondelet, you know, a little bit of Gravois Park probably, or would service, you know, that part of Gravois Park, and completely bypasses those communities. You know, even though you're expecting us to take our taxpayer dollars and pay for them, you know, it's just, I'm confuddled about how this is happening, and, you know, I'm certainly communicating my concerns about these on a very regular basis, but I don't see any change in the level of resources that are being dedicated to my community. And I can't speak for the others that have neighborhoods that are within the PIER plan for the last 2 years, year and a half, but I certainly, I have not seen anything but conversations.
Well, I'm not trying to dodge the question on the Metro piece. I'm not as familiar with that, but I'll certainly bring that concern back. And I would say for recreation, that was one of the very few divisions in the city that was not cut in the last budget, and that was a priority for us. And I understand there's a difference between not cutting and adding more, but we did put money
It's
in our
not
training.
just not cutting it, though, it's where those resources are going.
So, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds with the recreation, and we can always have them come and talk more about this, but the Cherokee Rec Center is funded with a separate fund with PIERS, and this is way before my time, so I'm not going to remember that, but that's summer playtime rec, and they have their own sort of unique, they're actually out of the director's office, not out of recreation division, so there's some nuance there. But we did put money, and we brought on and hired a trainer, Wyman, to train recreation staff. So obviously that doesn't necessarily
But
address.
if we have funds that are available through the recreation department or the director's office, you know, we can pass ordinances that change where those funds go. So if we're reviewing where the resources are needed, and you have a population on the south side that's 30%, you know, 4,700 young people live in Dutchtown alone, 4,700. Marquette is right there. Cherokee is a good mile, maybe 2 or 3, depending upon where you live in Dutchtown. You know, not to mention Gravois Park, which is just north of Dutchtown. So, you know, Cherokee's nowhere near them.
I mean, I live in Gravois Park, and it's not that far, but I understand what you're saying.
For a young person, it's very far. And for a young person in the city whose parents probably don't want them to leave the block, let alone the neighborhood, it's exceptionally far.
And so I'm happy to get that information and find out some options there if that's what you'd like. Again, part of the reason to come today was to get some input from you all, and what I hear is that understanding where recreation capital funds are allocated is of concern, and we can definitely look at that and get some information back to you. My understanding is that there have been improvements made to Marquette. Again, the pool was fixed 2 years ago. That was inoperable prior to that.
They poured a bunch of concrete in the bottom of it, and, you know,
It's now
plugged a leak.
usable.
Yeah. So, my other concern, though, Carl, is if this is changing, you know, as one of the folks that represents a neighborhood that continually gets plugged as the most dangerous neighborhood in the most dangerous city in the entire United States, you know, I would think that I would be invited to be a part of the conversations if this is changing, and I haven't been, which is incredibly frustrating. You know, maybe you all have invited Kara Spencer or Carol Howard, or maybe some of my colleagues from the north side that have neighborhoods that are in the PIER plan, you've invited them. I haven't been a part of any of these conversations. So, it's very, at least when this was being developed, I at least had some preliminary conversations with folks when that was taking place. Maybe not very in-depth, but, at least my opinions were being gauged, and I was at least engaged somewhat in the planning process. So if this is being changed, which the whole point of this resolution was to get an update on this, which apparently there isn't one, or the update is that this is going away and we're getting a new plan. So if there's a new plan coming,
I can
then-
guarantee you will have input, and I'll make sure that it's more significant than last time as well. So that will
So far, it's
certainly
been
happen.
0.
I know.
Okay, well, just to be clear,
That completion?
that's it. Thank you.
Well, I did get a definition of mazel tov, just so you know. Some of us didn't know what it meant. Right.
Oh, sorry,
Not a problem, it's just.
my Jewish heritage coming out.
Right. And
Cultural
that's not ours.
sensitivities.
Yeah, cultural sensitivities.
To me.
To everybody. Alderman Ornowitz, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, it sounds like from what I'm hearing here, so you're saying this plan was started in 2015?
The
Or
very December, like the last week, the end of 2015. I would say the effective first day was January 1st, 2016, just based on the holidays and everything else. But yeah, it's been
So-
in effect about a year and a half.
I'm just asking what's actually been implemented, because I'm hearing a lot of frustration out of the other aldermen in their wards. I know we have a new mayor, and we don't have a police chief. We're gonna probably spend more money doing that, which is the most redundant thing I've ever heard of. I go back to, you talk about hotspot areas. I never will understand why one of the farmer chiefs, Isom, ever dismantled Mobile Reserve. That was probably the best tool the St. Louis Police Department ever had. They did all the hot spots in the city and cleaned a lot of crime while the regular officers were able to answer radio calls. My other question is, where are we getting all this money to implement all these programs? Because it takes money. I mean, we don't have enough police officers in this city. The county has forced us to try to raise money to keep our officers competitive. So, everything's money. I mean, we're paying money to look out of state and everywhere for a police chief, which is a bad idea. We're spending money for studies to say, well, we did this and did this, so we're going to look at this way to doing it. We need to change our thought process here. You definitely need more people in the police department. We've never had a gang unit for a long time, or some assembly of it. I think we're trying to do one now. We haven't had a vice unit in years. We haven't had a lot of things. So I think from the, and then everyone wants to blame the police department. Let's be honest. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So there's the first place we need to start in putting other programs together. We need, be nice if you can get this governor to send some money towards parks and recreation also. We know that. But community involvement with police means you need more police out there to be able to do that. There's districts on weekends, and I'll tell it like it is. Sometimes in my district on the weekends, I'm lucky if I got 7 officers for 2 shifts. And half of them's riding one-man cars, and to me, those are dangerous precedents. So there's one start. We need to be more engaged. We need to find something for the kids to do, and we need to reach out to our senators and that in Jeff City and maybe reinvest in some of these schools that are closed and open them up so kids can go to schools in neighborhoods. We can't open every one of them up, I understand. So, there's a lot of things we need in the city, and it's money. But I think when we waste, we've had a crime crisis for the last, 10 years, and it just gets worse every year. So, you know, we have to start somewhere, and I think when we delay processes like we're doing a search for a new chief, that's wasting money. That's $100,000 you could be putting in a program somewhere, whether it be a park, recreation, or whatever, or after-school program. We need to get priorities in order here. We need to name a police chief so we know who the chief is and solve that situation. We need to start working with neighborhoods, you know, and people are blaming police because the response time is slow. Well, go out there and see why it's slow. I can tell you. But, you know, administrations can give excuses all the time. Well, we're doing this, but moving forward, we're going to maybe start implementing these things. All you're doing is pushing the timetable back. And you know that's what it is, and that's not a knock against you, but I'm just saying you're pushing timetables back. So, you know, we need to educate the kids out there. Somebody needs to get out and reach out with them. I agree. We got people in the city workhouse or the city jail that probably belong to mental health facilities. We need help with money there to get them there. We also need help in the court systems. When judges keep giving probation to violent people getting caught with guns 5 or 6 times. You know, I mean, how many times you give a person probation, you know, for the same charge? You just can't give it every time. I mean, we have to implement laws. You have to prosecute the real criminals. And there's a lot of people you probably can save. But we have to, instead of talking about it, start doing action. And I think since this one's been in effect, it sounds like there hasn't been much action. So,
And yeah, I'm happy, and I think I probably agree with 90%, 99% of what you said. I do want to be very clear with the police chief search that we are hoping and we are encouraging our local law enforcement to apply as well. In no way are we excluding them, and hope that we get the best applicant for the job, which we have many excellent internal applicants, so we hope they certainly pursue it. I'm not sure where the $100,000 came from. I have not heard that before, but you know, I think obviously if we were to hire an outside search firm to help us, it would probably be more closer to $50,000, but I'd rather pay $50,000 now to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the chief we have than not spend it and get criticized and not get the right person. But I hear what you're saying, and I would say for money, that's part of the reason that we are requesting this sales tax. That's one of the reasons that we know we need money to pay our officers more. We need to also have the corresponding use tax go to things that you talked about: recreation, education, mental health services. Those are extremely critical. Is it going to be enough? Obviously, we'll also have to look to grants, federal grants, state grants. You know, we will continue to petition both the governor and the president's office for, you know, assistance in mental health, substance abuse, and that types of areas. And then finally, obviously, you know, to the point of this committee, if there are things that aren't working that we can reallocate to things that do work, that's another source of funding. So we're hopeful that between those three, we can get us headed in the right direction, where we can, you know, increase the things that we have done through the PIER plan and other efforts, where we have increased funding for recreation, and some of the hours are expanded and some of the centers are improved, that the recreation staff is now getting professional, high-quality training, that we're spending more money on cutting grass, that we're now working to set up a charity bail bond to help people who may belong in mental health centers as opposed to jail get there. And then finally, that we train our staff on some of these best practices around dealing with people who have suffered trauma in the past. And, you know, we've also expanded our allocations to STL youth jobs, thinking about how we can ensure that individuals in our community have opportunity to have their first job and do well. So I hear many of your criticisms have a lot of merit, so I'm not trying to fight you on that, but I think there are some paths forward, and I think you'll be encouraged by some of the things that are done through the Citizens Advisory Committee, through an updated and expanded action agenda or plan, or whatever you want to call it. And obviously today, one of the things we want is that feedback from you. So I do really genuinely appreciate this, because this is useful to us, and we will, to Alderman Cohen's point, you know, do a better job about soliciting intentional feedback. So thank you.
And I'm not, you know, trying to be critical of you either. I know it takes time, but I've heard people at these neighborhood meetings, and they'll all say the same thing: we're wasting time and money naming a chief. And I agree with them. Even if it's $25,000, you're not going to find a chief that knows what goes on in this city of St. Louis than the people that's in this city. So to me, you're wasting time and spinning wheels. You're not going to get a chief from Los Angeles for $127,000 to come in here. you're not gonna get Chief from Miami for that pay either, so we just need to move along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Coulter,
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd.
I have questions. My question is, and I had asked another alderman when I saw this via the email, thank you, Terry, for emailing it to us, in regards to this PIER plan. And when I read through it, and I guess my question to the mayor's office, are you all aware of St. Louis Caring Communities or Sustainable Neighborhood?
Is this, the Caring Communities, was that Khatib Wahid's project?
Yes.
Way back, like
Right.
15 years ago? I'm familiar, and I've talked to Khatib about it in the past, and I believe Khatib actually, well, I guess they're gone now, works at the Circuit Attorney's Office as their diversion manager.
And so, are you aware of the Sustainable Neighborhood Plan?
I don't think, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, I did send a copy of that plan to Mary Crewsom's office,
Thank you.
so she would have that to look at. But I'm kind of like with the other aldermen, I see neighborhoods in here, and the main neighborhood in my ward that is not even looked at is Walnut Park East. And that's the cancer of my ward. And so I don't know if you, and that's why I'm just kind of concerned, because you're saying you're having these meetings. Where are you getting the information to know what you need to do to help those communities? Because what you all are saying is not happening, one, and then two, who's giving you the information?
So if the information is regarding crime data,
No, like you say, you meet with all the department heads, and they're telling you, okay, this is a problem area, and we need to focus because we have this high issues or hot issues, but who's giving you that information?
So it starts with the captains of the districts. As their officers drive around and talk to residents, they say, you know, the trees here are overgrown, there's drug dealing there every day, I want forestry to come in and cut those down. We expedite that.
Okay, so, no offense to the police, but if we don't see them, how they giving you the information? Because they don't, there's no police presence in Walnut Park East. So how, and it's barely in Walnut Park West, so how are they getting the information? That's why I'm asking. How would they know the issues are going on if they're not there?
And I think if, you know, our staff are not in neighborhoods, that's obviously of concern to us, and we need to address that. I would say, you know, part of the sort of collaboration is the police department needs to be proactive, but our operating departments and our neighborhood stabilization team need to be proactive, and hopefully our residents feel comfortable, and we need to prove to them that it's worthwhile to call CSB, to call in these things, and then we can prioritize them based on, you know, if there's, say, drug activity, you know, Miss McDowell from the neighborhood stabilization team can make sure that's a priority, make sure her neighborhood stations team goes in there physically, checks it out, calls it into the district captain, and then, you know, the police chief and us have to make sure that we're actually following through on that. So if we're not there, first of all, that I apologize, and I'll make sure, and I'll check with the captain.
And I'm not doing it for that. All I'm saying is, and I'm like Alderman Cohen, what you all have to realize is you're in the office, so you're not on the ground dealing with the issues. As me starting out as a community leader, and then a committee woman, and then an alderperson, I can tell you what neighborhoods, or what's going on in each neighborhood. And so each alderperson at this table pretty much know their ward, and they know what the issues are. But the people you have at the table, they're not knowledgeable to that, because it's real clear, as Alderman Cohen stated, half of those agencies aren't even in our wards. And so they don't know what's going on. And so my other question, you know, you all saying you want to give money to recreation. Well, I don't know if you all are aware, and that's why I asked you about the current communities concept, because we have territorial issues. And so the people in my community aren't going to utilize O'Fallon Rec Center because it's a territorial issue. So we even have a Baden Enrichment Center. They're not going to go there because it's territorial. So then that leaves the people in my area, they have nowhere to go. Those kids have nowhere to go because of territorial. They can't cross over. And so what I'm asking is, and I'm asking our chair, when they have this meeting, one of us should be there to give insight to what's going on. Because it's real clear, since I've been elected since April the 18th, it's been absence totally in an area that shouldn't be. We had 7 killings in one area within a month. And that's totally unacceptable to me. And so those people shouldn't have to live in that life. And I have people that lived over in that area for 50 years, and they shouldn't have to live like that. So what I'm asking the chair, if he doesn't object, that one of us could go to that. And we have ideas, and I figure I'm an expert to that point because I lived and breathed through the Caring Communities era and through the Sustainable Neighborhood era. And I lived in the time where we were losing African-American males at a number of 2 to 3 a week in the Walnut Park East area. And so we're coming back to that. And so I'm just real clear, we need to go back to the basics. You don't have to spin your wheels and recreate all this. You got the plans. All you got to do is follow the map. And I'm pretty clear, if you all follow that map, we can make some stuff happen.
And I appreciate it. And one thing I'm hearing loud and clear is incorporating better your presence and input and feedback as we move forward, and I will make sure that that happens, and I'll be back with the chair to follow up on that request. And then to the Caring Communities piece, we actually last session had worked with the alderman and Alderman French, who's no longer with us. Well, he's no longer on the committee. He's still around. About how we can support Caring Communities potentially through Prop S funding and thinking about aligning some of those programs. I'm happy to have that conversation because I think it's a great program. I mean, everything I've read about it, because it goes on throughout the country. It's just no longer here in St. Louis.
And so this is my question to you. Have you all looked at tapping into state agencies to come into with this PIER 1? Because it's real clear, it's just not a city issue, it's a state issue. And so that was the success of Caring Communities in the Sustainable Neighborhood, because they partnered with the state. And so that was my other question.
Yeah, I personally have made multiple requests. I know others have as well. The result I see out of Jefferson City, unfortunately, is the cutting of those exact same programs you talk about. So we will always continue. We will never turn down help if it will, help our residents. I don't think that anyone in our office or anyone on the board would ever turn that down. I would say I'm not as hopeful that will come, but we will continue to make those requests. And if there are opportunities, and we are doing some projects with the State Department of Mental Health around opioid abuse, and we're equipping and training our corrections and police department and others on the Narcan stuff that keeps people alive if they're overdosing. So there is some assistance there, but it's not the deep assistance that once occurred 10, 15 years ago. And that's unfortunately seems to be the climate at the state and federal level right now, not focusing as much on supporting, at-risk individuals and more on locking people up, which I think is unfortunate, but is where we are today.
Okay, thank you. That was all.
That is all of the members of the committee. We do see, are there any follow-up questions from members of the committee at this point? See Alderwoman Ingracia, who's not on the committee. Did you have any? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then. If that completes all of that, you had something, Alderman? Then that really completes us for our agenda for today. We will be getting with you about ensuring ways for our input and then the shaping of future reports and its presentation to the committee. With that, we don't have any other agenda items. That means our meeting's adjourned.